Good morning, everyone, and just welcome members of the public, councillors, staff, and just a reminder, we're live streaming this meeting, so welcome to the public who are going to be watching this live stream. We're just going to take apologies first. So we have apologies for Councillor McRoby and Councillor Hopkins. Do we have any other apologies? Would you like to move? Accepted. Councillor Holding, Councillor Wallstein. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? It's carried. Thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest? None. This is an additional council meeting. We don't normally have public forum. We do have Mr. Bob Gaze, who's turned up just to talk to us about Tudor Hill Road. So welcome, Bob. We'll have about 5 minutes if possible.
Thank you very much.
We'll hear from you.
Yeah, well, the reason I'm here now is the other morning I went down Tudor Hill Road. At Parsons Road corner, there was a lady pushing a pram with a dog. And I was well up the hill and I slowed down because I was doing 40 Ks. So I could see she was panicking. Here she was on the corner, pram, dog, behave, put the chain on it. The pram was just about going over the bank. You put a new road in there, there's about a 15-foot drop, and you haven't put any safety barriers up in the corner. So you hadn't thought of pedestrians with all your roading around the district. And Western School had a reunion recently. 15 of those kids, or 9 of those kids came to our place. They all used to ride horses at our Elmer Pony Club in those days. And those kids could ride their horses from Kakanui and Beach Road all around our district up to Lark Street where my parents lived. They had horse tracks on the side of the road. You've come along with your graders and put tar seal in and dug irrigation ditches along beside your tar seal. The gravel used to come out and the grass was on the side. There's no thought gone into children going from one house to the next in our area to keep our community going, taking pets home and things like that. I drove from my house top of Tudor Hill Road the other day, picked my children up from the Argowan Hall school. And as I went, the lady up the top of the road she went down the road about 50 Ks. I went down there at 45. Got to the corner, her turbo of a car, because she changed gear, was slow getting up and along the road. As we went along Parsons Road, there was 2 cyclists on that road. I slowed down at my 45 and allowed those cyclists to get round corners so as I could overtake them on straight lines. We got to the stop sign in what's name road. There's a in Homestead Road. You come down around the corner and there's a one-way bridge sitting there. In 2002, you had $10 million worth of depreciation assets from last century. And you gave it to a private irrigation company and they never paid you back any of that money. You could use that money to replace that bridge, make it a double road bridge, and that would allow traffic going from Kakanui, from Western, could go through to Eden Street and down there into the town, taking the pressure off of there, and down Buckley's Hill, taking trucks and that from there to there. In other words, you're increasing 2 arteries and taking the traffic away off from the Western Road. Carried on to the school, and when I got to Argowan School, that lady was just the length of the car park ahead of me for doing 50 and 60 Ks, and me sticking at 45. So I'm saying to you now, I want 50 Ks all around that area. And that you just spend money like to the $300,000 you're asking to give to people that have had their fingers in the cookie bar for years for parties and that down in the historic part of town, to spend on putting a pedestrian way down Parsons Road over the fence. Years ago, your roading engineer, Barry Fairburn, got them to bring that fence up to the side of the road when they built it. And there was a strainer post put there, and I said, you'll kill a kid on that road. And one girl was killed there. I never said anything because I felt sorry for the people that were involved, emotions at the time. This time, you've had 8 accidents on my Tootie Hill Road since Christmas. And these 3 of those cars were rollovers. We never had rollover cars before because you've got a tar seal airstrip coming up the hill for them to get up speed and then land on a gravel and come around the corners faster. Just lucky nobody was killed. Now, I was told to bring my fence out to the Tootie Hill Road by Barry Febb. And I said, no, Barry. I said, I've already fixed my fence 30 times from people hitting in the car, and I need that grass verge on the side for them to spin their cars off. I was called a liar the other day for sending in a report in here saying there was 160 car accidents on Tootie Hill Road in the last 45 years. That's only 4 accidents a year. Every year, parents give their child the car to go to school to do their exams with a new licence, and it's obviously a good place for them to learn to drive on gravel roads. And they always come into trouble. So I've put up with a dusty, dirty road all these years for that reason. Now, the other point I want to point out to you is that your engineers down here, you've spent $4 million on the roading around the harbour. Those roads down there served Oamaru for 150 years for all the commerce coming into the district and all the commerce going out of North Targa through the railway station and the harbour down there. You've spent $4 million down there and you've made a mess of the town with your turnarounds. Your roading engineers should be put under supervision by the registration union. How many times?
Yeah, I'm going to pull you up there.
Yeah, sorry, righto.
You're stating a lot of things as fact, which, they're not factual. And references to Mr. Fairbairn, I've never heard of him, and I've been here for years.
Barry Fairbanks.
So it must be a long time ago. We haven't spent $4 million on roading around the harbour, so I'm not sure where it's come from. There's a number of things that you're saying which aren't correct. We are going through a speed limit review at the moment, and a number of roads are included in that review. There's Tootie Hill Road, there is Parsons Road, there is, I think, parts of Homestead Road. You've stated that we gave 10 million to the irrigation company. We loaned 10 million, they've repaid it, we've relent back to them. So yes, they've got money. It is depreciation money. Depreciation money can be spent on replacing assets like with like. If we took out that one-way bridge, it would pay to put a new one-way bridge in there. If we want to make it two-way, then we have to find the extra money through rates and NZTA subsidy. So there's just a few things in there that's just not correct. The reality is most of their roundabouts are working very well, and I think people who go through the Reed Street intersection would say that's working very, very well. I just want you to, if you could just lay off the criticism of staff in the way that you are, and actually just stick with what you're telling us about your anecdotal experience with these different roads. That's helpful, but it's also they are included as part of the speed limit review. I'll ask Mr. Jorgensen if he has more information on that, but I'll let you finish off if you just want to say anything else on the matter.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I'm not allowed to criticise.
You can criticise work. I'm just saying, I think it's a bit unfair to be criticising.
Well, here's an example. You've allowed a developer to put Waitaki Road coming into an intersection into Tootie Hill Road. And they've allowed it to come in below the brow of a hill. They've allowed them to cut the road down. To the culvert was 3 metres below my paddock. The road was, the paddock that it was in was originally up this level. They cut it down. Surely an engineer at training school would have been told not to bring roads in below the brow of a hill and to stop tar seal at the top of a hill where the road takes a bend and change it to gravel road. It's not a safety thing. So it's hard to be able to criticise anybody if you can't bring it out. You know, the gentleman, you didn't want me to speak before about this a couple of months ago, and you asked me to talk to a gentleman and another gentleman. It'll be in your records. But that gentleman never got to talk to me for 2 weeks. The first words that were said to me was, "We're tar sealing that road today." So in other words, the conversation wasn't worth me going and having a meeting with him, because I was on about the tar seal road, the cutting down and shifting 200 truckloads of clay out of the paddock next door to me, creating a bank that's going to wash down when the rain comes, and I'm going to have to do earthworks here to bring it to right levels. But anyway, you all do your individual things, and you're all trying to do the best for North Toga, so thank you very much. And I'll just pull my head in from now on and let you think about things.
Yeah, it's not about children. It's not about not criticising what's happened. It's when you start talking about specific people, specific roles. So I'm just wanting, we want to know where you think the issues are. That's fine.
Well, the issue I see is that you should bring make Homestead Road a decent sized road, bringing traffic through from Buckley's Hill to there and down to Eden Street, taking traffic off your main street, going through Thames Highway, and reduce the amount of flow through there.
Just ask Councillor.
Footpaths.
Yeah, Mayor Curtin. Yes, thanks for your comments, Bob. Just not really a question, but just down places like Homestead Road and Parsons Road, because I cycle really quite often. I know there are no verges to get off the tar seal, but would you think it was good money spent by council to actually then put a verge along all those roads for pedestrians or cyclists? It would cost a lot of money. So,
how much? I worked at TY on that project. I know what it's like. You spend $40 to $8 million a year approximately on. These figures can't be accurate because I'm only just a visitor talking. But it would definitely be worth it. Those roads were put in by horse and cart, taking stone from the quarry, and they zigzag down. You've put your roads in the same way. The bit of money that you've put down, you've got to rebuild our community after COVID. You've got that 18 million or 10 million on it away. You could bring that into their private companies, can get money elsewhere from other banking systems. That gives you a block of money. When I was at 10 years ago, or 10 years after the Manapori Tunnel, we had some young engineers there, young Gokas that have been with us. They were now supervisors in the North Island on roading jobs. They said to me, "We can't do what you old buggers taught us to do." He said, "It costs us 30 to 50% on road management, and that is the extra costing on our roading." He says, "That means that," I said, all your workers have got to be controlled when they're by the roads to 30 or 40 Ks. But our school children and all that on the roads going from one house to the next door neighbour's place are not protected at all. You've got 80 Ks on them. You've got 70 Ks. You've got 50 Ks.
So just
I've finished.
Neil, can you get an update on the timing for the speed limit review?
Sure. So we've just had submissions come back in on the speed limit review, and it's coming to the 22nd of September council meetings for a decision. On Tudor Hill Road, it's going to be recommended that it be changed to 60 kilometres an hour, and there's majority support for that from the feedback we've got in the submission process.
Thanks very much.
My wife signed for me on that petition.
You've sent me a couple of letters or dropped them in, and they became part of that process. So your opinions have been considered with the comments that you did. But thanks very much, and I do appreciate the concern you had for the community. Believe me, we do have that ourselves. It's always a balance of trying to prioritise the things that we think need to be done first and getting on with them. And if we had infinite amount of money, we wouldn't probably have too many problems. But between
Well, it's where you spend the money.
restrictions we have and the fact that actually some people still not drive well, we will continue to have problems. But anyway, thank you very much for your concern coming in. Councillors, we now have a presentation from Tobias Fahl, who's one of our interns, and Tobias has been here with us for some time. Our intern program has been curtailed lately because of COVID and the lack of ability to get international interns to come here. But Tobias has stuck through. He's been through lockdown and he's been doing a lot of work for us. But it's a pleasure to introduce Tobias to do a presentation on his time at Waitaki District Council. So welcome.
Yes, thank you, Gary. Good morning, everyone. Of course, I'm going to give you my final presentation. My name is Tobias Fahl, in case you haven't met me so far. And well, let's just get started. I'll start with an agenda or with the contents about my presentation. First of all, I'm going to talk a little bit about myself, where I come from, what do I study, what is my background. Then a little bit about my internship and my time in New Zealand in general, with a slight focus on the time in lockdown and stuff and that experience. Then I will continue with the plans for my future. And in the end, we will have a small Q&A session in case any questions are left. That being said, hold your questions till the end, really, unless you can't understand me properly or anything is unclear, then you can intervene right away. First of all, about me. I'm from Germany, as you might have heard already, more specifically from a part in the southwest, state called Baden-Württemberg. I was born and raised in more in the northern part. I wanted to point at it, but yeah, that's it, Heilbronn, that's where I was born and raised. And I'm studying here on the southern border in Constance, which is really on the Swiss border, really. And that's actually a picture of Constance, where I'm studying, by the Lake Constance, which is the biggest lake in Germany, split with Switzerland and Austria as well. And you can actually probably, like the border is running around here, actually. So you can actually walk across the border, really. It's quite nice. Then just some random more facts about me. I am studying business law at the University of Applied Sciences, which is a slight difference to a normal university. Concept is usually not that well developed in the English-speaking countries. Before I came here, I spent an exchange semester in Finland, which I enjoyed very much and was a very interesting time. Midwinter, so it was pretty dark actually, but still nice. I very much enjoy traveling, should be no surprise given the fact that I'm here and in Finland before. And apart from that, I usually enjoy skiing a lot and do it whenever I can. In New Zealand, I had the chance, to be honest, but yeah, I had to rent out all the stuff, so it just was too expensive for me now. Then why New Zealand? If I was in a job interview, I would tell you something about my education being business law, and law in general is usually restricted to the country where I study it. So I would learn about German laws. Obviously, they don't apply here in any way. So I always would try to go international. I wanted with my internship to kind of find out how much is possible with my education, with my background. How much can I do internationally with that as well? But if we are more private and more amongst ourselves, I would tell you that I'm a huge fan of the Lord of the Rings, and that's a major part of my decision, to be fair. And you can actually see all those pictures are Lord of the Rings scenes, which I really enjoyed traveling to and which was really important to me. Yeah, I saw the movies, I think, the first time when I was 3, and my brother showed it to me secretly, and that triggered a major family crisis later because obviously it came out. But still, huge emotional connection there, so I had to come and see it at one point myself. Then a little bit about my work. I started off with the procurement policy and rules. Also, given my law background, I felt probably that was the intention of council in the first place to get me here. And the current state, I hope that Paul is going to bother you with that in the next couple of weeks, a little bit with that. A lot of that is actually probably my thing. We try to focus a lot about the process. How can one become a supplier of the council, and to make that process work? We already had some talks about the social procurement issue that we included in that. Don't really know the state of the art of that right now. And the second major part of my internship was to creating outlines for our preferred supplier relationships. Now, the name is still pretty much subject to change, so don't nail me down on that one. Which kind of is supposed to be working like that. We are trying to balance out long-time relationships with our suppliers, or with council suppliers, with general sense of fairness with the public in general, so that also other suppliers have more chances to enter government contracts, as well as formalize a lot of the contracts or the relationships that are already in place. And that's basically how it is supposed to work. There is going to be one top line relationship where it really is going to be a contract that outlines the relationship with the supplier and the council, so that officers have a much easier time on the lower level to just really purchase stuff and just get stuff there. Generally, we try to include checks and balances in that, or that's how we try to set up the system. Most importantly, with financial and time limits on the contracts, and changing the officers or departments, if possible, that are responsible for those contracts, to ensure that nobody is getting involved too much with the suppliers, and that there is no chance of an unfair advantage for someone. And well, I kind of recommended the last one, that is just leaving as much responsibility as is possible with the departments, because they have the professionals, they know what they're doing, they know the markets and stuff. So not to meddle too much with them, and still balance also centralization with decentralization in that sense. Balance it out properly. That was most about my work. Then my time in lockdown is, yeah, it was not all that interesting, as you might imagine. I tried to learn some French in that time to make it worth my while, with a very limited success. But yeah, obviously, that's just try to do something useful. Then about my travels a little bit, where have I been? Before the internship, I spent a lot of time traveling around on the North Island, which was quite nice also to get used to the accent a little bit, which is new for a foreigner, I guess. You usually don't hear all that much Kiwi accent somewhere else. I've been to Queenstown right before lockdown, and in Christchurch right after lockdown, then later in Dunedin, in Mount Cook, which was very beautiful, and on the west coast, where we had amazing weather, me and the other intern, which is quite unusual, as I've been told. Well, then my plans for the future, what will happen afterwards? Well, in the last meeting, I kind of just said, well, homecoming is the first issue, of course. That's going to be interesting. The flight is booked. We'll hope that it goes, actually. Yeah, after that, I will go back to my studies. I have like around about a year left. June, July, I will probably finish and have my degree in the end. And after that, it's really all just subject to change. I have not really made any major decisions where to work, what to do, maybe study something else or try to specialize in some direction. The Dragons then all gave me the suggestion maybe to do something with my French, and I have that interest, and I was like, yeah, actually, good idea. So maybe I will follow on that, but it's just thinking right now. So that was my presentation. If you have any questions, then please.
Thank you very much. Yeah, sounds like quite an adventure, and I think anyone who goes through lockdown in a different country, it's challenging. So, but well done. Councillors, questions? Councillor Wolfstein.
Yeah, thank you, Tobias. And as chair of the Performance Audit and Risk Committee, I'm very pleased to hear you working on the procurement policy, and it's something that the auditors, our auditors have been very insistent on for quite some time. So I thank you very much for that work, and looking forward to seeing the policy brought forward. And, yeah, just a wee question. Just you're travelling around. Where was your most favourite place in New Zealand from your travels?
Hard to say, but I think it was on Sunday actually, because that was the major Lord of the Rings scenery that I wanted to see. So that was very important, and I always saw those pictures already in the movies and later on, and I was like, yep, this is the place, I'm gonna go there. And it's just in the middle of nowhere, and Anouk was with me. She was quite confused, what are you doing there? I was like,
Yeah. Did you get to Paradise when you're in Queenstown, where they filmed lovely Lord of the Rings as well?
I don't think so. We have been there. Yeah. Also seen that.
All right. Well, all the best for the future, and thanks for what you've done.
Yeah.
Waitaki.
Pleasure.
Yes, councillors. Thank you very much, Tobias, for the work that you've done with us and for spending your time here in Waitaki. And I think we've certainly benefited from the work that you've done. So thank you. Wish you all the very best and good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Tobias, we have a small gift here. Again, thank you very much. You were the last of the first great pre-COVID-19 mentor. It always is a great pleasure for us to have you. And the fact that people come from Europe, all over the world, at your own expense, and you volunteer, you work for nothing, you do a lot of really great work. It's really good for the community. And you've been an absolute pleasure to have on board. So well done and congratulations, and enjoy your gift. And travel safe and COVID free.
Okay,
Well done.
thanks, Tobias.
Yeah, well done.
Now, councillors, move on to item 4.1, adoption of the strategic framework. And just Mrs. Bailey, she wants to speak to this.
Sure, I'll speak to this briefly. I don't think it needs a great deal of introduction. Obviously, the very good work that you went through as councillors in reviewing your strategic framework has resulted in this draft document, which is attached to this report. It is in the process of being put into a more graphically pleasing image, but we weren't quite ready with it in time for this report. So effectively, we're asking you to approve the content of this with your tweak as the graphic is created, so that we can move forward and include it in future processes.
Thank you very much. And definitely thank you to councillors for the involvement in coming up with this. The document itself is something that's intended to help drive our vision for the district and drive what we do as governance and our decision making. And it's also very important for staff to have something to refer back to when they're making decisions of how they're going to be doing things. So, and I just also want to acknowledge Mrs. Bailey and Mr. Jorgensen for their work in facilitating the final result of this. It was pulling together a number of bits of work that we've done and making sure that it sort of came out as something that made sense and was going to be legible to not just to the people who have been involved in it, but to staff and our community. So, having Waitaki, the best place to be, and our collective purpose of empowering our people in place to thrive, I think is worthy aims. And then the more detailed elements that come under that. I'm looking forward to it being reproduced graphically, as you mentioned. And because I think it's something that we do want to have on the wall here in the chamber that we can keep looking at and refer to when we're making our decisions. So thank you very much for your work. Councillors, any comments or questions? So I'd like to move that we adopt this. Councillor Tavender and Newton, thank you. Other comments? Okay, I'll put it. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. And against? It's carried. Very much. And thanks again, Mrs. Bailey. Appreciate it. Right, now move on to 4.2, the Three Waters Tranche 1 funding. So we'll put forward Mr. Jorgensen and Mr. Payson.
Good morning. I'm pleased to present to you this next report on the Three Waters Reform Tranche #1 funding. As you might recall, at our last meeting in the 11th of August, Council approved to sign up to the MOU, or Memorandum of Understanding, with the government to participate in the Three Waters Reform program. As part of that reform, the government has made available to participating councils and participating regions, of which we are part of Canterbury for this exercise, a sum of money to carry out additional works than what we'd already planned for this financial year. Including the regional money, we are eligible for around about $6.74 million of additional work that we can put into our economy, and this report here today is having a look at that funding, and in particular the projects that can form part of the delivery plan, which is part of the Memorandum of Understanding that we signed. So the meeting on the 11th of August allocated councillors to assist the team to put together this program, and I'd like to thank Ross, Peter, Bill and Mel for participating in that program, and that is attached to the back of the report. So essentially what we're recommending as part of this program is the investment of around $1.5 million for water mains and $1 million for wastewater treatment in Palmerston, $1.4 million for water treatment upgrades in Amarama, $200K for more water storage in Duntroon and Odumatata, $500K for improvements to campground water supplies, $500K each in Western and Odumatata for water main replacement, $500,000 for various electrical upgrades throughout the district, $300K replacement for water mains at Rob's Crossing, $100K for a new tank liner at Amarama, and $100K each for wastewater planning at Duntroon and Meraki, as well as $100K for sewer improvements at Ohau. So there's a good diverse spread across the district, and we believe we'll keep our contracting community well employed for the next 12 to 18 months using that funding. As we discussed as part of the annual plan last year, council agreed to look at the resourcing of the waters team, and at that time added 5 additional positions to the water team to cover a number of areas and deficiencies that have been discussed with council. Part of that program was expanding the team further over 3 years, and to carry on this work, we're also recommending that we bring forward some of those replacements. We've suggested 3 to ensure that this work can be carried out to best effect, and it means make sure that the right pipes have been replaced in the various areas around the district. It also, unfortunately, part of this conversation is that the waters team has outgrown the area that they're in, and they need further accommodation. This was also discussed as part of the annual plan process last year, and so we are recommending that part of this funding is diverted to fund further accommodation for the waters team. I know that's never an easy conversation. I guess the plus side from here is that additional resourcing and the accommodation can be funded out of the grant money that is being provided by government, and does provide good value for money when compared to if we had to use contractors or consultants to deliver that work. So that's really the basis of the report. It's seeking your approval for the work program, which feeds into the delivery plan that we need to submit to DIA for approval, with the works I outlined previously, and also empowering our Chief Executive, Mr. Power, to employ those additional resources as well as the accommodation. So open to questions. Unless Mr. Pacey would like to add anything.
No, you summed up nicely.
Thank you very much. Well, this item, there's a lot of different elements to it. And I think it's only fair to make sure that we've got the best ability to discuss it and so forth. That I'm just going to be suspending standing orders for that discussion. But first of all, are there any questions? Councillor Percival.
Yeah, recommendation 3, B and C, relocation, set up and staffing covered by the grant for the first 2 years, after which it would then become rate funded. Are you expecting that within the reform program that the model will change and perhaps it will be taken out of our hands? Is that something you expect? I know that's pretty presumptuous, but I mean,
It is at this stage the reform. The advice we have through the reform process is it's up to each council to opt in, and they can opt out at any time. And there's been no decisions being made at this point in time. I understand the decision point where council can choose to either stay in the process or not is somewhere between May and August of next year, and that's really going to be the key decision point with the advice we're receiving at this stage about whether council continues to participate or withdraws from the process.
what does concern me is the relocation. If things don't change under the reform, that will be demanding quite a considerable amount from rates to maintain that function isolated from this building, or having its own premises to the tune of maybe, what, 400,000 a year.
Well, we answer that.
Yeah.
The part of this process, as we discussed with you during the annual plan, was the up-resourcing of the waters team to be able to cover a number of different areas where it's unable to deliver at the moment. So there's a number of risk areas across the district, and as we've discussed, there have been a number of, I guess, close calls where we as council has been responding to. For example, the incident last July where we came very close to running Oamaru and the connected supplies out of water during a flood event. We've also had incidents in Kurau where the water were due to a breakage in mains, the water to the town was turned off, things like that. So those are the type of matters we're trying to address and are of concern. We also have in this financial year around $10 million worth of works which we plan to do, which we need to carry forward because we simply didn't have the resourcing to do that work. So that those number of things have resulted in us putting that proposal forward to you to increase the resourcing of the waters team over a 3-year period, which council resourced the first year. So more accommodation was always on the cards. So this year is just bringing it forward a year, so that we're able to deliver this additional program to best benefit for the community. It was always going to need to happen in some way. We are now recommending that happen now due to these additional opportunities that we have in front of us.
Councillor
Just around the idea of new premises. Obviously, when you've got units working out of HQ here, they're covering a portion of the overheads of the HQ activity, if you will. Having the entire unit move out of there and covering the costs of their own overheads, do the overheads within here get dispersed across the rest of the activities? Like, is there a cost to that there that we're not capturing?
So that's correct. So the same costs that we pay now still have to be paid. In addition to that, so the additional cost that needs that's included in this recommendation is essentially there's a power and utility cost. There's an additional rates and insurance to pay for a different premise, and then there's the lease cost. So those are the additional costs over and above what we're paying now. Okay. And that's included in that dollar amount in the report.
Okay, Councillor Milne.
If we were to go for the commercial lease option, is there assurance that it would come back to us again before committing to any further period beyond the 3 years that is being looked at today? Would it definitely come back to council again for approval?
And once the 3 years is up, I don't see any reason why it cannot.
Make sure that that's stipulation.
Okay.
Mr. Power.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. But one of the things that I've remind councillors is that council has purchased the short building at 24 10th Street with the intention of having in close proximity to centres, which would be ideal. However, the process of consultation with the public in relation to that proposal will be part of the long-term plan. So there's an extended period involved with that consultation, and then obviously the design and the actual fit out of the building. In the interim, it is still very much an open question as to whether or not, in a national sense, the waters function remains with local authorities or not. So certainly there are a number of questions that need to be asked in the future, and I would anticipate that the team will be coming back to council addressing that in the future.
Councillor Holding.
Just referring to the summary on page 10, the wording is likely to receive 3.69. Is that guaranteed to receive?
So at the moment, the decisions, I believe, not quite formalised yet. That's with the Canterbury Mayoral Forum, I believe, will make that call. My understanding with Mayor Kitchell, you're right, if I get this wrong, is that once councils agree to the delivery plan, which we're doing today, that will then be shared with the Canterbury councils through the Mayoral Forum, and then once all the other councils have done that, that will then be approved by the Mayoral Forum, and that money then dispersed once it's happy. Is that quite close?
It's very close. But what I'll do is just expand a little bit on it, just for the benefit of people who may be watching this, is that we've been granted $3.73 million directly, and then for some reason we've been put into the Canterbury pot. We've got 59% of our area is in Canterbury, so it may be for that reason. But anyway, our regional allocation's been put into there, so an equivalent amount for each of the Canterbury councils is in there. That totals 50 million. There needs to be a regional discussion around how do we feel that should be best split up. And it's all part of an ongoing discussion that we're going to have with that region. We are also having discussions with Otago and Southland. So that got some government funding to help that discussion go on. We may need to actually put some more money into that as well. What Canterbury is saying, who haven't had government funding for that discussion, so it's going to have to come out of this allocation, is that let's put $1 million aside for that. It's obviously more than just talking to each other, it's actually getting the resourcing to put together studies and so forth that need to happen on a regional basis, which for information we just don't have. So that drops our 3.73 there to was going to be 3.66 million. We've had a discussion, said, look, we're actually in two camps here because of our relatively unique nature. And so it's going to be, will contribute slightly less than what was going to be intended. So that's the long way of saying, particularly what Jordan said, is that yes, we've got reasonable certainty that we will get that amount, but the discussion has to be finalised.
So what you're saying is that we actually have a unique opportunity to develop and deliver 3 waters for the district using that funding. And it's quite important to try and ascertain the staff that's needed, the specialised staff that are probably quite limited in the country at the moment, to try and bring them here so we can utilise them. And then the other question is what your thoughts are on, say for example, if after 2-3 years it did become out of local government, what is the potential for the regional hub to be located in the Waitaki area, and what are the opportunities and the offsets that could potentially provide as well?
Okay, yeah, so the first question, yeah, we're certainly keen to recommend to get ahead of the 8 ball in this and attracting staff to deliver this work. There is, I think as I've stated in the report, there's about $140 million of extra money coming to Otago and Canterbury, and to get the resourcing to deliver that work may well become quite competitive. And the last thing we want to be in is in a situation where the cost of the work actually starts increasing as competition gets harder, which then negates the benefit we can deliver. So we feel by getting these teams on the ground earlier and get them on the ground early and in place means that we can start getting some contracts out and locking our contractors in on some relatively long-term contracts to deliver this work while the pricing is good. So I think that's an opportunity. The second part is one of the potential byproducts from establishing the waters team in a separate office could well be the establishment of a hub or a centre of excellence, which could be quite attractive if 3 waters does get taken out of council. If it's working well and it's in place, it might be, well, we can just leave that to operate. It's already going and becomes a good node, which then helps deliver for council one of his previous objectives, which was attracting more well-paying jobs to the Waitaki and having them within our district. So there's that opportunity, whether that comes to pass or not. I guess time will tell.
Councillor Wolseley.
Yeah, thank you, Neil, and your team for a very complete report. Just a couple of questions. One is on page 22, the chart that I did not read. So I'm sure it came out on my iPad also, but that's just a comment.
Oh, yeah, yes, okay.
But my question really is, in terms of your program of works,
yes.
The 15 programs you've outlined, 7.45 million.
Yes.
What's your certainty on the pricing you've actually got there? Because they're all just round figures. Are they just PC sums, or are you fairly certain most programs can be delivered for the price that's been shown in the program?
Yeah, excellent question. So the intention there is some of those projects they'll cost what they'll cost, and so they're a relatively good estimate based on previous work, like sort of tank farm replacements. Some of the other work, like water main replacement, it will potentially be a target price. So it'll be, we've got $1.5 million. You tell us how much work you can do for that sum, and we'll do as much as we possibly can. So the work will be tailored in that manner. And we do have very good historical data on what competitive rates are, so we know what it should cost. So yeah, so there's a mix in there. Some will be what they will cost, and some are, this is how much money we've got, how much water main can you get in the ground for that. Yeah.
Just follow up just and that with the water mains, for example, there'll be a fair bit of depreciation money held by council as well. So that money would be available to pay for cost overruns if the project costs more than what's provided in the program.
Yeah, so there are a couple of opportunities moving forward, and so in regards to that, if we carry on we'll start this program, and then in 12 months or 18 months time we decide we'd like to carry on with it because it's whatever the environment's like, or we want to provide more stimulus, we could add renewal money to this to extend some of this work. So it might turn into a 2 or 3 year or even 4-year program if that's what we wished. The other alternative is it might be, well, if we don't spend that depreciation money, then we may be able to put that to one side and actually use that money to pay for our annual depreciation costs, therefore saving rates. And that's something Mr. Hope and myself have started a preliminary conversation on and bring back to you as part of the LTP process. So if we say as part of the $1.5 million water main replacement in Palmerston, say $1 million of that was going to be depreciation money, then in theory we've collected money for that depreciation money, but we haven't spent it. We've used other funding for that. So then that $1 million could be used for another purpose. So we're just working through how that could work to the benefit for our ratepayers. That should come up as part of the LTP discussion.
Right.
Yeah, Mr. Jorgensen, this is a sort of continuation of Councillor Wolstein's question, but this is sort of new proposed work, and you'll still have your what you were going to do anyway.
Yes.
Is that going to be impacted with the likes of adding this on top, or can you handle all the extra that's going to happen? I know part of this is about getting the staff to do so.
Yes, we believe so, but I'll ask Mr. Pacey if you'd like to make any comment.
Through the chair. Yes. Excuse me. The intent of this report is to increase capacity and resource team to be able to do this. If we don't increase the capacity within the team, then definitely it will impact on the current works program. So we see this as achievable if we can get the extra resources and obviously the space to work within. It is achievable if we didn't get the extra resources and employed more consultants as well. It's just more cost effective doing it the way we're proposing.
Just a couple of questions. First of all, well done putting this list together. It's comprehensive. It covers a lot of parts of the districts. It probably tackled some of those issues which are, we've done the low-hanging fruit improvements and so on where we can, things that are easier and relatively cost-effective to do. We're on the difficult ones, and I think you've managed to cover a good section of those. So well done, and thanks to the councillors who also of that discussion. One of the issues that I want to ask about is around stormwater, because we aren't really talking about stormwater in any sort of way here, is the ongoing bottleneck we have with the under the 7th Street Bridge with the gravel build-up. So, last time we had a big rain event, the water just could not get through because it was the gap was too small. It seems to me resource consent, but it's something that should be a relatively straightforward thing to do. It will take a little bit longer. You do essentially have 18 months to do this. Was that considered, or can that be considered as part of the work?
Yeah, the slight difficulty with that is probably just a more technical one, is that it is a creek issue, not technically a stormwater issue. It's not part of our stormwater infrastructure as such, but so it's not doesn't actually fall under the Three Waters area. So it's falls into that sort of creek maintenance and road maintenance issue. So I think that can be looked at, but it would just be through the roading funding as such. So yeah, that's probably a little bit difficult to fit into this process. It's not actually a stormwater issue, it's actually a flood issue, which is related, obviously, it's water, but it doesn't quite fit under our stormwater infrastructure assets, and indeed that asset's actually NZTA's as well.
Yeah, that surprises me, because we've talked often about all of the extra development that's gone on in the catchment, all of the extra roofs that are catching water and discharging into that.
Yeah, into that creek. Yeah.
So it's very, very, the volume, at least in part, comes from
stormwater
housing that's gone on.
Yeah.
hard surfaces where
Yeah.
rainwater doesn't soak in. So I'm surprised that it's not able to be counted in there, but it is something that does need to happen regardless. So if it can't happen through this, some other work is going on in the meantime. Is that currently is the bottleneck. I think most of us would go past there regularly, would agree, and it needs to be done. Just going to my other question is you state in here about the proportion of costs to projects or the management of them and so on, and saying 6 to 8%. It seems to me you've got the you're taking the 3 positions in accommodation and using that as the amount to determine what the percentage is, but surely there's going to be more than those 3 people working on these projects. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so to explain that, so generally if if the audits team is managing work, the overhead component is around that 6 to 8% of the project cost of money spent on the ground. And if we're using external resources, which are obviously more expensive, that's often between 18 and 22% of the project cost on the ground. So that's, I guess, in this particular case, the cost of 3 staff and accommodation is works out about the same percentage, but that's the same percentage what we see delivered right now for projects that are delivered. Obviously, there is a range in that depending on the complexity of the project. So if there's a particularly difficult or technical project that does require input design, those figures vary from case by case. But on a standard work, it can be around that 6 or 8%. On more complex work, it might be a mixture of staff and consultants. So it could be 12 to 14 sort of percentage, and then on a project wholly managed by a consultant, it's more at the upper end. So that it is a mix, but that's the kind of ranges we're talking through. Mr. Pacey, did you have any more to add to that?
I'd just like to add an example to that. The Hamnack pipeline, we decided to fully use consultants to run that project, and it was a touch over 20% of the project value was spent on consultants running that. And that was a pipeline, which is bread and butter for us. So,
I guess my argument is the figure you use is only the 3 positions. So not taking into account any consultants or any other staff working on $7 million. So just so it just seems to be that it will be more than 6 or 8%. Hoping to get a better idea of what that would be.
Yeah, that's fair. And for pipeline work, it is likely to be 6 to 8%. But when you look at some of the other projects that we've got in here, like Amarama Drinking Water Standards, we will use consultants for some of it as well, because it is specialised design. So that number may be slightly more for those sorts of works.
I guess the other thing is we've, in the annual plan, approved the biggest increase in staffing that I had any experience with council, with 5 positions going into the water team, so an increase of pretty much 50%. To me, it seems like we need to recruit those people and get them bed in to actually see how that's all going to work before we decide whether we're going to recruit more. As stated in the report, I personally didn't agree that we necessarily needed to go to the number that was presented to us. So 5 was a major step forward and a major increase in capacity. But can you explain better as to why 3 more people are needed as well? Because I think the 5 were taken on in advance of an expectation we were going to have to do a whole lot more work, which this is a lot more work.
Yeah. So the 5 roles weren't specifically project roles. They were a lot in the policy planning, asset management, and support, GIS support. These 3 roles that we're looking to bring forward were project roles in year 2 and 3. The intent was to try and leverage off some recruitment process that we're currently working through. We've had some good prospects that we could potentially employ off the back of recruitment of a senior project engineer. There's a possibility that we can leverage off that. So we were looking to take the opportunity that the project roles are very different to the 5 roles that we have in this current plan. They are to work on this funding availability and the projects we've identified. So they're quite different roles.
Council has actually been through this before with the regulatory team, where there was a similar number had to be recruited due to changes in how we deliver building consents and the like. I think there was actually 5 in 1 year that was added to the team there to ensure that they could deliver. So it's not a justification for what audits need, but I'm just saying that council has had to go through that process before to meet new expectations from both the government and then deliver them to the community. That's quite similar to what we're facing now within the Waters Department.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, my comment is not just the numbers, it's the $600,000 that, and the fact that it's going to be we've managed to fund it through other things this current year that we're in, but 1st of July next year, that's going to be 2% more on rates. So to fund another 3 positions on top of that's another 1%. It's going to have to ultimately come from rates. So yeah, it's just trying to make sure that I'm clear on exactly what's intended, what's going to happen, not just for this year, or next year, is after that, and the cost to the community that this ultimately is, whether it's done in-house or whether it goes out, still whatever the cost is to the community. So just being mindful of that. Any other questions? Get some more.
Just there's nothing more frustrating to a ratepayer to watch a road be dug up and a pipe replaced. And I just want some reassurance that teams are working together, bringing forward program of works between roading department and the waters department to make sure jobs are done once and potentially we can leverage some savings for the roading side of things if you guys all coordinate jobs appropriately.
Yeah, that's certainly been one of the issues, and that's again the resources that Mr. Pacey just talked about. Part of that is to assist with that. That is always a challenge for waters, roadings, and other utilities teams to make sure we've got those programs as coordinated as possible and try and stop the surprises coming forward. Just the fibre installs coming through cause quite a few issues where we're not in control of those programs, but then we're trying to ensure that footpaths that have just been resealed don't get dug up and things like that, and try and keep ahead of that. So yeah, the additional resourcing already approved for waters, some of that helps with that, but it's an ongoing work for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, just for my own clarity, I'm looking at the submission to the DIA. It's a submission. Is there any ability for the DIA to say, no, you can't do any of these things that are listed in this?
Yeah.
That is so. Option 1 under that proposed listing fails to pass.
Yeah.
Do you have alternative options?
Through the chair, I was in a meeting with the DIA lead and the lead of the new water authority, and they made it very clear that they weren't planning on second guessing what the engineers on the ground were proposing to bring forward. What they were wanting to make sure that there was no white elephants that would come back to bite them, as in approved funding for something that's just ridiculous. Effectively, the projects need to tick off the requirements of the procurement plan, and these all do. So I'm very confident that we should have no issues getting these approved.
Are we ready to move?
Yes.
Can I move the recommendations as they're set, please? The recommendations as they are.
So that's one.
Yes, please.
Seconded. Hello, Daly. Thank you.
And just to speak to it, it's an uncomfortable discussion, and it's always going to be. We've been thrown this, and it's something we have to move really fast on from a national level. It's really good to see the good spread of projects and things across the whole district. So it's got a bit of bang for buck, and also looking at the availability of contractors and things. I think the Three Waters team have come up with the best option available to them on the housing of staff. It's not a comfortable one. I think the whole ball game is going to change very shortly, and we're setting our team up so that we can, if we're doing it well, then I think we've got more opportunity of actually keeping positions here locally no matter what happens. And I think we want to be giving our staff the opportunity to set up early with the availability of staff and move fast. And I really appreciate how fast your team has moved with this, because I think it's going to make a big difference. We've already got some new staff or new people in the wings that are putting their hands up, and I think that there's to Waitaki as a whole, but also the fact that we've moved a bit faster, because these are positions that across the country are being sought after, and giving you guys the ability to move now with looking at other ones is the best angle, because if we sit on this, I can tell you they won't be there, and they may also not be there, but I think this is giving us the best fighting chance to get these projects through and done, which I think is in the best interest of our community, which is, yeah, fantastic. So thank you for your work behind this.
Councillor King.
These are most unusual times. We've never seen money be thrown around like this now. And so we've got to take the opportunity to make the most of it. We're going to position ourselves for the future by, and so I'm going to support this, by taking advantage. We don't really know what the landscape's going to be like in 3 years' time, because there's sort of so much concern. But there's a big amount of money which is available to be spent fairly quickly. So we've got to be in a position to do so. So I'm going to support the motion.
I certainly agree with a lot of the recommendations and generally with the program of works. I do have a couple of issues, and I would actually, it's very difficult to talk about the accommodation side of things in a public meeting because it actually involves commercial sensitivities. But we have got a building that we bought to ultimately house staff that's a matter of working on. We've got some funds already that we could use on it. We've got additional rental that we could be using on it. It would provide a long-term solution to council's accommodation needs and future-proof us. It would also provide an excellent office space for 3 quarters or whatever else that might be needed. We haven't had that really presented in any way to us because it seems to have been just too hard. There is a timing issue. There are interim solutions which cost the right part. It may mean councillors haven't met at the Opera House, and council meetings being at the Opera House for the time being, but we can make that work for ourselves. It doesn't need to cost what it's been estimated to cost, because actually we set the fees here, so the money go around doesn't need to happen in the same sort of way. I think that this is, as Councillor King says, these are extraordinary times. It's times to actually look at, how do we best build resilience into the organisation, and it's to me not going and getting a 3-year lease on commercial building. It's actually developing assets that we've got and utilising the benefits of that. I think outweigh the difficulties. It means that we're rejig inside the headquarter building. So yeah, we're inconvenienced a little bit, but it's actually going to end up with the best result, I think. So I'd certainly say that. The other is really around the staffing, and we've got flexibility in the position, 5 positions, because I don't think they've all been recruited yet. So there should be some flexibility in that as to what type of people that we end up with making up those 5 people. We are grappling with currently a massive increase in rates for next year that we will have to make some major decisions on how we're going to cut that increase. So that's a lot of work for us, but we're up for it. And on good solutions, it's still going to be difficult to get it from being a big increase. Essentially adding a legacy of employing people through a tranche funding going to have to be funded by rates or through other user charges that happen with an aggregated model is cost to the community, and it's we owe it to our community to make sure that we've investigated every single option we possibly can before we go down that particular path. So absolutely, we cannot turn down the overall money. We've agreed on that. There's supposed to be no hooks in there from the government. So I'll make sure there's no hooks in here for the decisions we're making today as well. It's not quite as clear as is written here what the long-term impact is going to be on our ratepayers and the obligations. That's where I'm sitting. Everything else I'm pretty happy for. But just if it was possible, I would say let's park those 2 things and let's actually spend a little bit more time thinking about those. But we'll see how discussion and vote goes. Councillor Miller.
Well, the reason that we could look towards setting ourselves up as a centre of excellence potentially, and attract long-term benefits through being that to our region. I will support it today, but I do think we need to, I have the same concerns with the premises that we do already own, and I don't think we should be looking at this lease option as a long-term solution. And so I know that there's money involved in setting up the leased premises. I think that we should be doing everything we can to make sure that whatever solutions we set up in there are transferable to a new premises, and that we do start looking towards using what we already have as our long-term solution. But otherwise, I am in support of the recommendations today, as long as we are thinking of bringing everything back in-house in the future.
Anyone else want to speak?
Well, I think standing orders have been dropped. Look, this is a temporary measure almost going to a premise. And we haven't really had the long-term discussion as to the building next door, as to how we'd like it to be in the future. In the meantime, we're meeting in our chamber here. We have seen what it's like going to the Opera House, and I don't think it's perfect either by any means. In fact, well, to be quite honest, I quite like our home right where it is here. But that's another argument, and I don't think we want to enter into that today. This is for the next up to 3 years, and then we have discussions between now and then as to the future after that.
So, hello, lady.
Yeah, I just wanted to support what Councillor Kingan and Deputy Mayor has said. I'm in full support of the proposal for this morning. I think when we look at it from a governance perspective, our collective purpose is around empowering our place and to thrive. And I think in order to put our district anywhere near that, we need to be considering what does it take to make a prosperous district. to foster a diverse and resilient economy. We need to have a strong, resilient community as well, also ensuring that we enable safe and healthy communities. And the bottom line is we need to have good quality services, and that's robust core infrastructure. So I don't see any other way around it, and this proposal is probably going to sit us in the best potential opportunity and position for our district. And that's really important for us as governments to have that assurance that the operational stuff is going to get sorted, and from our perspective that we'll be able to monitor and overview all of that progress. So I'm in full support. I'm also in full support of potential hub for excellence, because I'm all about building capability and opportunities for our community, and there are employment and educational opportunities right there also for our district. I know what it's like to deliver a model that becomes the national model, because I've done it myself, and that takes a huge amount of resources and a huge amount of commitment as well. So full support of your team, as long as you make sure you deliver for the community. Otherwise, you're going to hear it from us again. But no, thank you very much to the team, and yeah, no, I'm full support of that. Thank you.
Councillor Wolseley.
Yeah, thanks. Just going back, Neil, to your recommendation number 3, loans program of works includes provision of a 6.74 million of infrastructure investment throughout my team district. When you go back down to your page 19, your list of works, that's 7.45 million.
Yeah.
Then carrying on with 3B and 3C, 300k for relocation, 350k for the staff. That's not in the program of works. It's listed on page 17 to 19 that I can see. So, can you just explain to me how that paragraph, the recommendation number 3 is?
Sure. So it is, it is in the program of works. It's the first item for 650. So there is a slight difference between the numbers. It's total of 7.45, and as funding we're expecting 7.42. But we expect with swings roundabouts that'll even out about right. We use rounding essentially, so we're not too worried about that.
No, apologies. Thank you. I'm sorry, I missed that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that enlightenment.
Any other speakers?
I'd just like to say I'm in support of the whole concept, and the discussion's been really good today. In particular, Councillor Milmine, actually to the premises, and what the long-term plan is a really difficult one for us to actually quantify, considering we don't know what government is going to be doing in this arena. So short term, yes, lease, and if we can bring it in the house, if government change plans, all good and well, if government decides to take over, it's in a different realm anyway. So.
Yeah, just to comment around the, I guess any fit out, a particular building we're looking at, the fit out is extremely minimal, and so it does mean that any money we're spending is on stuff that can be relocated. So very transportable, and the 3-year lease, hopefully as the recommendations written, just give you confidence that it's just 3 years, and then after that stage a new decision will need to be made.
Okay.
Just to,
oh, sorry.
yeah, just want to say, look forward to some work being done down Palmerston area. Going forward.
Same.
Looking forward to around the whole area as well. But as I said earlier, yeah, it's great to see money going to some communities that are struggling otherwise to afford it, and it's going to make a difference to places like Palmerston, so on. So anyway, we'll put them, excuse me, put them one at a time. So first of all, check what we've got here. So number 1, those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? It's carried. Number 2, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? It's carried. Number 3, taken total. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? No. That's carried. Number 4, those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? It's carried. And number 5, those in favour say aye.
Aye.
No. That's carried. Sorry. Right. So thank you very much, gentlemen, and all the best. It's really important to get the best value out of this money that we possibly can. We haven't been successful in getting big chunks of money from the government. Not as successful as some places have. So show them as well and deliver incredible things for our community. So, all the best.
Thank you.
We'll now break for the morning tea.
10:30. Yeah, but that will.
So we'll have a 15-minute break. So 10:35 we'll come back. Thanks very much. Just welcome along CEO of Sport Otago and Owen Booth, and also Eric Ben speaking from staff. Just a presentation from Sport Otago with obviously an emphasis on Sport Waitaki and what they do. I hadn't realised, but Mitch McRae, our coordinator, has just recently been head of police college. So stepping away from a glorious career in administration and getting into the community in a different way. Anyway, welcome to John and Owen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. We welcome the opportunity just to meet with you and present what's happening in not just Waitaki, but across Otago, so that you can have the context. What we intend to do is a forward-focused discussion, outlining future direction, our response to COVID, both recently and currently. Talk to you about the fact that we have a changing role and that we've become a major funder with the distribution of the Community Resilience Fund and Tū Manawa, which replaces what was Kiwi Sport. And then talk about an exciting project that we're floating that would apply specifically to the Waitaki region. So I'm going to pass to Owen just to start talking about future direction.
Thanks, John. So yeah, 1st of July this year was the start of Sport New Zealand's new 4-year strategy. So obviously in the events of COVID, it has been put on hold, but we're looking to obviously realign our organisation to make sure that we can deliver on some of those outcomes, and it has meant a significant shift in some ways. So the way in which they're investing into us now is that they've got 7 targeted areas, and I'm just going to talk you through what those 7 areas are. And effectively how it relates to the regionals is that we've obviously got our coordinators. So here, obviously, our Sport Waitaki coordinator. In some ways, they get the best of both worlds because they can utilise the Dunedin-based staff that are delivering on Sport NZ outcomes, but also react to the community flavour and what's going on in their community and deliver on those needs as well. So I'll give a little bit of an example of how that works as we go through. But the 7 areas that Sport New Zealand are looking to invest in Sport Otago for this year. The first one is called regional leadership and connectivity. So that's about our role as an RST that we have in terms of working with council and funders across the region to talk about play, active recreation and sport and the systems and processes that we put in place to help particularly our young people to be active. So there's a specific focus on 5 to 18-year-olds within all of these initiatives, within all of this Sport New Zealand strategy going forward. The second area, and again, this represents one of the big shifts, is that Sport New Zealand are now really interested in the play space. So obviously, sport focus has shifted to the look at physical activity in a far more broader light. So included in that is play. So we are, it is a requirement that we have at least a 0.5 role based around play. So that person will sit within alongside the next component, which is PE. So there's a 0.5 play, a 0.5 PE, and they're our tamariki lead focusing on 5 to 11-year-olds. And their role is to look at the way in which play is, the opportunities for play, to partner with other organisations within Otago to try and facilitate more opportunities for our kids to be active through play. The PE component relates to what's been called healthy active learning. So this is a pilot project that's running through a number of RSTs at the moment. We're due to come on board with that in 2022. So for the next 12 months, we're looking at setting ourselves up to be able to deliver that program within schools across Otago. That's done in collaboration with Ministry of Health and Ministry of Ed. So there's 3 components to that: sport, health, and an education component. The next area is active recreation. So again, like play, this is a new area for Sport New Zealand, or I guess more of an emphasis on active rec. They would say they have always been in this space, but it's definitely a more significant emphasis. For us, that's about understanding who our active recreation providers are across the region, and how we can use active rec to, again, get our community more active. This component focuses on rangatahi, so our 12 to 18-year-olds. So we're really looking at those that aren't participating in sport, that are perhaps disengaged or haven't had those opportunities, and trying to find out where they are and then partner with other organisations to put programs in place to get them to be active through active recreation. A new area for us, so we've got a bit of discovery work, I guess, to do in that area to find out who these partners are and how we go about doing that. So we've got a 0.5 in that position as well. The next area is sport, but it's quite defined in terms of what they mean by sport. So in the past, we've been everything with regards to sport in terms of what an RSO or a club needs. We can help. Sport New Zealand's investment into us now is quite a bit more targeted. So they're looking at leadership at an RSO level. They're looking at coach development. So actually developing our coaches, not just going out and running coaches courses, but running how do we actually develop our coaches to be better coaches. They're looking at participation and development opportunities for our rangatahi, and also parent education. So those are the 4 areas that they're looking to us to invest in us for. The 6th area is spaces and places. So this is obviously our regional facility strategy work, which we've done, obviously had a fair bit to do with up here in Waitaki. So that just continues. That's pretty much business as usual. We've got some resource, about an FTE dedicated into that space across a number of roles within the organisation. So that continues. And then the final area is insights and evaluation. So that's about understanding the needs of our communities as a whole in terms of finding out what our demographics are. Where are the opportunities for us to get people more active, and that links back to something that we'll talk about if we've got time at the end around the survey. We did a survey up in Waitaki earlier this year, and we've got some follow-up work that we're hoping to do on that if we get some funding as well. So I'll talk a little bit about that later. But that's an example of where we've got an insights lead based in Dunedin who is working up here as sort of our coordinator brings that person in to do that specialist insights work. So those are the 7 areas that we are working in. So maybe take questions at the end. Hand over to you, John.
So we've certainly been in an unusual situation with the impact of COVID-19. It's really impacted everybody and flowed right down through communities. So we've effectively taken the lead for the sector right across Otago. We've provided regular updates to the sector with all the information flowing down from government. It tended to overwhelm everybody. So we acted as the sifting organisation so that we were putting out the most relevant information. We established the Otago Regional Sports Alliance. This was actually set up just prior to COVID, but it provided a vehicle working with the regional sports organisations, getting them together through Zoom and Microsoft Teams on a weekly basis to ensure there was a coordinated response right across Otago. And that involved all the RSOs within the Waitaki district as well. We carried out a survey fairly early on just to assess the impact that it was having on the sector. And as a result of that, we were able to target our assistance, our help, and through funding that came down through government, where we could target that financial resource to have the greatest impact. So in the first phases, it was about survival, keeping people afloat by providing them with the necessary funding to meet some of their obligations, and then working with them on recovery plans to get themselves to a point where if activity is resumed, they were in a position to start delivering and providing participation opportunities as early as they could. We liaised with councils, and that was a really important thing. Kept in contact with Eric, so that, again, there was a coordinated response across the district and that they were kept fully aware of what was happening. Part of that was advocating to council on behalf of the groups that were in trouble as to how council could assist them, either through reductions in ground or lease charges, other ways that they could provide some relief. As I said, we became the distribution agent for the Community Resilience Fund, and we distributed close to 350,000 across Otago just to keep everybody ticking over. So it covered things like their rent, power, some of their operational costs, charges that were being imposed on them, regardless of the fact that they were still in lockdown. We provided COVID tracer apps and signage for all sports fields and facilities. And again, that was in conjunction and with the full cooperation of our councils. We went into a deal with a private organisation to provide low-cost hygiene products. So that was sanitary products and cleaning products for our clubs. And we developed health and safety plan templates. A lot of the councils took the view that they would not allow any grounds or facilities to be booked unless the club or the organisation had a health and safety plan in place. We had to accept that most clubs were run by volunteers, didn't really have the time or the capability to develop that. So we spent a lot of time and energy working with them to help them put those plans in place. We worked with Allied Press, who own most of the newspapers across Otago, to ensure that there was regular coverage on what was happening, why it was happening, where it was happening. We instituted virtual sports awards, and you may have noticed in the publications that were coming out from Allied Press that we were effectively supplying most of their sport coverage. It was either related to COVID, what was happening, or it was related to that virtual sports awards coverage. Internally, we generated online resources that provided the ability for a whole range of organisations, including early childhood sector, to provide online learning opportunities for people when they're at home. Activity ideas for under fives for mums and dads to keep their kids active while through lockdown. And with that Regional Sports Alliance group, we established a series of working parties which are continuing, which are focusing on effectively a reset and a restructure of the whole sector. We will never go back to the way it was. So working with these groups, we are looking to change things for the future. So it's how competitions will run in the future, how it can be delivered into schools differently, taking account of the voice of youth and working with them to identify what have been the barriers, what can we do to improve things and do things differently going forward. And that's flowing into the current situation where we're all sitting in level 2. So that prompted, again, a lot of work on our behalf, coordinating the sector so that they were in a position to respond at level 2. Initially, quite a few of the codes put their hands up and said it's too hard and were likely just to stop doing everything. We sat with them, worked through how they could actually plan to ensure that their activities continued to be offered and how they could actually offer those in a safe environment. And as a result, Otago probably led the way across New Zealand in that we maintained our participation levels. So that's probably if it's working, a segue into talking about the funds itself.
Yeah, so John mentioned the Community Resilience Fund, the CRF fund. So in the first round of that, we had, I think, 42,000 go out to 24 clubs and regional sports organisations within Waitaki. So there's a good amount of dollars that went out through that. We're currently in the second round of CRF. So that runs from July, August, September. So it covers costs incurred for those 3 month period. Close off applications is the 4th of September. They've widened the eligibility criteria, so it includes play and active rec this time around, not just sport. And there's also some other costs that you can claim for that weren't in the first round, things like turf fees, affiliation fees back to the regional body and those sorts of things. And also you can apply for up to 25,000 now, whereas it was capped at 1,000 for clubs and 40,000 for regional sports organisations. So we're still pushing that at the moment through our clubs up this way, and we're hoping that we get just as good an uptake as we did it from the first round. We do have more money to give out this second round than what we had the first time as well.
So for Tūmanawa, we've got 800,000 to distribute across the region. So it's working with our sector to encourage them to develop initiatives that target those groups that are listed. And in respect to the Community Resilience Fund, there's 719,000 that's available within Otago for organisations to access up to 25,000, as Arm's mentioned.
Yeah, so Te Manawa Active Aotearoa has replaced what was Kiwi Sport. Again, a significantly greater amount of money to distribute, and also a broader criteria than what Kiwi Sport was for. So again, this includes play and active recreation. Whilst it's broader in terms of target areas, target groups are more defined. So we are looking at more of our low risk groups, those that aren't participating, looking at engaging those with disability, low socioeconomic areas, women and girls. Those are some of the specified target areas that Sport New Zealand have said they want to see this fund spent into. In terms of who can apply, one of the different things about this relative to Kiwi Sport is that councils can apply to this fund, along with numerous other bodies as well. The idea is working in partnership, so looking for opportunities to partner with different organisations to provide these opportunities for our rangatahi and our tamariki. And the last thing that we were going to cover off today was just around a little bit of a research project that we're hoping to do up here in the Waitaki. So we did a survey of stakeholders back in just before COVID hit. I think we managed to just get it in. Looking at how the Waitaki role was performing in terms of what we were doing well and where were some of the gaps. So some of the things that came back from that survey is particularly around there were perhaps potentially some areas or some gaps within communities that we weren't perhaps engaging with as much as we could be. Again, that links back to some of these target areas we talked about earlier around disability, some of our ethnic population, and also young women and girls and youth as a whole. So we're hoping to do a bit more of an intensive research project looking into that within the region. So we're currently trying to pull an application together. We've been in touch with, I think, Hannah, Andrew's been in touch with you around Pacific Island community and representation. We're also working with the Māori community as well to get them on board. And we're looking at October, I think, is the next deadline. So this is to the Lotteries Community Fund that we'll be applying to get funding for this project. And yeah, the next application round for that closes in October. So we're hoping to get everything lined up so that we can put that application in to get that funding to do what we think will be a really, really cool project up here. So I think that's it from us. Obviously, as I say, we haven't a bit more forward focused than what we would normally present. Normally we come and talk to the reports that we've submitted, but with Mitch not here, we thought that might be a little bit tricky to go into too much detail. So hence why we've taken a bit more of a forward focused approach. But open to questions.
Very happy to hear what's coming up. So we can anticipate and perhaps even direct what we might be doing. Certainly welcome the opportunity. So thank you very much for that presentation. Councillors, any questions?
The second round of funding is it for those who haven't applied earlier on, or
no?
Particularly?
No, you can apply again. Yep. So it's for a different time period. So the first one was for April, May, June. This is July, August, September. So you can apply for the same cost plus more, but just for a different time period.
The initial round was probably a bit more restrictive in terms of its criteria. Second time round, according to the criteria, and that's based on the learnings from round one. Some groups didn't quite make the cut because they didn't meet the criteria that had been established. This time they do. So it was finding a way that government could help as many people as possible.
Is it sort of quite widely known that it's available? Is it?
Yes, we've been promoting it and we continue to promote it. So.
Councillor Milner.
Yeah, it's good to hear that you're setting, well, looking towards the project to help fill in any gaps locally, and you're setting up some working groups to try and make sure that, you know, info is being fed and to see if we are missing out on anyone around our district. I understand there's been a desire locally to set up a community steering group in order to help feed in into any of those gaps that might be out there. How are you going with that? Are you feeling like you're fulfilling that function by doing what you're already planning on doing with this project and with those working groups, or is there still room for a community steering group to be set up?
No, we want to put the steering group in place to provide that ongoing guidance and support for the role. So Eric and I have been, well, talking about this for a while. It's with the Mitch now moving on, we've sort of got to restart that. We've got a list of names and people within the community and organisations that we feel could sit on that steering group. It's just a matter of now bringing a new coordinator in and then pulling those people together. So yes, we still do think there is a need for a steering group.
Councillor Wallstein.
Yeah, thank you, Owen and John, for that. Very interesting. So just a couple of questions on what you mentioned the way through. Your 7 points, active recreation. You mentioned about touching out to clubs and organisations in the area, but you did mention the age group of 12 to 18. Lots of clubs include a broader range of ages than that. You know, in terms of things like, for example, the tramping club, for example, which has members from young to old, do they fall into that active recreation classification, or is it only where there's a big membership from 12 to 18 bracket?
This is where I guess we've got that advantage here. The Sport New Zealand funding, in terms of what they're looking at, they're focusing on that 12 to 18 age group. So for them, active recreation, 12 to 18, that's what they're looking at. So they're looking at programs and initiatives that are going to get 12 to 18-year-olds, for example, more involved in the tramping club. Yeah. There's no reason, if while the role that's based here, if there's work that can be done or capability work that can be done with the tramping club from 0 to 100 in terms of age, that person can't be involved in that project.
And that just reinforces, Colin, that we're not just about Sport New Zealand, we're wider than that. Yeah. Our role is to actually reflect community need. So if there's a need to work with any organisation across the whole age spectrum, that's what we do.
So those 7 areas dictate where our Sport NZ money is going to go. But obviously we've got community funding as well, which allows us that flexibility to work in those other spaces.
Right, yeah. Just on that point, so there was, the figures mentioned, the Te Manawa 800k and community funding 790k. Are those two different amounts of money, 2 different tranches?
Yep.
719 and 800.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, right. And just the other one I was going to ask on was spaces and places. I know, John, you made a presentation to us a couple of 3 years ago regarding indoor sports stadium for Waitaki. Has Sport taken done any more work in recent times? Or?
Yes, working with Eric towards the end of last year, early this year, we completed phase 3, which was sort of the detailed assessment of spaces within a proposed 6-court stadium and an indicative costings for those. So we presented about 6 different scenarios, I think. So, yeah.
I should have come to council in due course here.
I think you probably saw that the last week was probably a good 12 months ago that last week was done. So,
yeah, thank you, Tim.
Okay. Eric, did you have anything to add?
No, I guess just to emphasise, I guess there's an opportunity now with the changing environment and a new coordinator being employed, and incidentally Matthew will be on that panel as well as far as recruiting that position. And with the recent survey that's done, it's a good opportunity to sit down and just take a look at, I guess, where we can focus effort from that Sport Waitaki coordinator going forward. I think we've done a good job of entrenching our current programs, but now's a great opportunity to actually look at where the gaps are and what we do in that sort of space.
Thank you very much. for more comprehensive report, so I'm receiving that. Thank you very much. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Gentlemen?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thursday. Interviews are on Thursday, so hopefully not too, I don't have to wait too long.
Good to hear. Okay, councillors, we're now moving back to item 4.3 on page 25. So, I'm sorry, Mr. Hope. Let's talk about Christmas trees.
I thought it was just my naturally jovial personality that. Thank you, Chair. Look, this is a slightly unusual item, but it really is to address an opportunity that arose. In addition to being jovial, I did have a very good view of every time the Christmas tree was put up and down and had to look at it for a month or so. The reality is that putting formerly live trees up for a while, many of them are of marginal quality, difficult to decorate, and don't last particularly well. So I think really what is proposed here is to follow an approach that many other districts have now taken, or districts and community organisations, to have really high quality artificial trees to help the community get in the festive spirit. And so that's what's being proposed, to purchase 3 trees to address the storage, and then to seek co-funders to spread the financial cost. The ongoing cost, if you look at the life of the tree, is really not going to be significantly different from the annual cost that we face anyway. It just comes up with a better looking solution, one that has decorations and that can be added to, is really fit for purpose, and really addresses a number of issues. So that's really all I've got. So myself and the Mayor can answer any questions, but hopefully it's pretty straightforward.
And if I could just add to that, so we've certainly been successful with discussions with potential co-funders, and one with a significant contribution that's very close to making that commitment, and also looking at being able to install and disinstall, uninstall the tree each year, which obviously saves some issues there. There's always storage issues and so on, but we've basically got sponsorship for that, and we've had other successful discussions with Rocket Trust as far as the contribution to it. So the reality is that if all goes well, we will have very little contribution we need to make from council, and certainly when you consider that it's been costing in excess of $10,000 a year for what we've had, this is going to be a great long-term solution that people will appreciate. Not everyone likes artificial trees. The reality is it's going to be good, and a lot less effort and time from staff. Good as well. So anyway, Christian. Mr. Newton?
Yeah, you mentioned $10,000 a year for the current costs. That's purely for Oamaru, or is it district-wide?
That's purely for Oamaru.
Second question, the proposed trees, what sizes are they?
So we're looking with the Oamaru one, a 10-metre one. So just as a comparison, the Cenotaph outside council is 13 metres, so it's reasonable height. With the other two, looking at 4.5 metres tall, which in the context of Palmerston streetscape and Pura streetscape, relativity is good. As far as centimetres per capita, you're getting a very good deal as far as they are. I mean, it would be great to do more community geez, but this is a start, and certainly big improvements been happening in the past. There may be some extra costs around power and so forth, but that's where we're applying for other funding. Get as much of that covered as possible. So the net cost to us is we don't know yet, but we're doing all we can to make sure that that's as low as possible. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Kircher, for your report. Comments. As far as the tree, artificial trees, from experience in other areas, assuming it's given normal due care and attention and assembly and disassembly and storage.
I think if it's well treated, it should easily see 10 years. Waitaki here, I think, with their one. And I don't think you'd notice that it was any different from when they first put it up. I'm not sure actually what warranty side of things is, but if it is well treated, I mean, it's out for a month, one thing, at that period of the year, and then the rest of the time it's stored neatly away, and that'll help make sure that it lasts longer. The idea is that well, we haven't talked about depreciation and so forth as far as whether we're going to fund that or whether we're going to fundraise each time, which is the other option. That's something that we can have a further discussion on once we get more details.
Thank you.
Councillor Tavendale.
Just confirming, I'm pretty sure, but the trees involve the decorations, don't they? The cost.
Yeah, fully decorated. So it's basically, it's a frame with tinsel and decorations and so forth, totally covering it, and then lights. I'm not sure how the mechanics work because it's kind of sections, but presumably they're all, the sections are all got the lights on them, and then they come together and away you go. That's how I'm imagining it anyway. Christmas is all about imagining. Councillor Tavendale.
I'm just keen to move it if we're ready.
Any other questions? Okay, take that, Councillor Tavendale moving that one. Second, Councillor Pinger. Thank you. Any further discussion?
Just that, like, our team has put a lot of work into the trees over the years, and they've been well blasted for it just about every year, and it's been quite, I think, most demoralising for them. And we've certainly had the interest and the wish to do better. The other thing is we've had a really early Christmas parade quite often, and trying to get the tree to stay alive from there until after Christmas has not really worked. So quite often we've actually not had the tree up in time for the Christmas parade, and I think that's a real shame. Like, all that stuff we need to, as a town here and further afield in the district, do better, because Christmas is really special and this place looks amazing when we do it right. Exciting. I'm a Christmas person, and I think it's really cool to see us actually investing in this a wee bit, and I think that the community will actually love the outcome. So
Totally agree. That's unusual.
Just on consideration, it's obvious that it's going to pay for itself. You're talking about 10-year lifespan. $10,000 at least co-funded. So $10,000 obviously that we spent on the roads going to be saved over the district, which is great. Some people will bite back, obviously, given the COVID regime that we're under, and perceptions that council is wasting money, which I don't personally agree with, because Christmas is a time of festivity, and we are looking at the long term, not the short term. So I'm quite well behind this project to actually see Christmas trees around the region. If we can get more in these little towns, really well, but we have to start something.
True. Thank you, Councillor King and Councillor One.
This has been before us before, and we had the argument artificial versus the real thing, but the real thing hasn't really worked and I think it's time now to do the artificial thing. It's about kids' enjoyment. It's also about big kids' enjoyment. So a bit of glitz, a bit of colour. I'm all for this. Let's do it.
Do you want to add one for infield?
Oh, we'll come into it. We'll go to past.
Right. Good. Councillor Milner.
Yeah, just echoing that, as the Deputy Mayor says, it is a really tricky subject every year. There's a lot of negative feedback on social media, which is not always pleasant. And generally, there's been some great feedback about what Waitaki does and how their tree looks. And so I can't wait to see ours come up. And I very much look forward to a discussion on fairy lights in the near future.
Good. Just look, you know, size doesn't matter, but my Maddie's is only 7 metres. 10. So we win. Anyway, councillors, I think that's probably enough discussion. We can put that. Those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Okay. Just want to make a special note of the birds item, part of that agreement is that we fund any funding shortfall from RMA Reserve Fund. So the idea is that none of this comes strictly from rates itself, but it will be coming from either other funders or from the fund that's gathered as people do subdivisions, etc. So yeah, it's just an important thing to note, I think. For the Grinches that might be out there, or the people who are concerned that we're not spending their rates wisely. But anyway, that's that item. We now need to move into public excluded. So I'd like to move Councillor Holding and Councillor Milmai. Thank you. Those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.